Corveth stood in the briefing room of the Thelian command ship and tried not to show his confusion. His 4 eyes blinked one pair at a time as he read the orders on his datapad again. The words did not change no matter how many times he looked at them. "You want me to observe humans?" he asked. Admiral Voss sat behind his large desk. His gray scales caught the light as he nodded slowly. "That is correct. You are our best military analyst. We need to understand how humans fight." Corveth had been a military analyst for 12 years. He had studied the warrior races of the Keldan Empire. He had written reports on the hive tactics of the Vex swarm. He had observed the mechanical precision of the synthetic collective. These were all worthy subjects for study. But humans? Admiral, with respect, why would the Thelian Empire care about humans? They are small. They are weak. They live such short lives that they barely have time to learn anything useful. Admiral Voss leaned forward. The old warrior had seen many battles in his 200 years of life. His eyes held knowledge that Corveth did not yet understand. "That is exactly what I thought," Voss said quietly. "Then I saw them fight." Corveth waited for more explanation. But the Admiral said nothing else. He simply handed over a data chip containing the mission details. "You will join a human military unit on the planet Kara 7. They are defending a colony against the Vex swarm. Watch them. Study them. Then come back and tell me what you see." The journey to Kara 7 took 3 days. Corveth spent most of that time reading everything he could find about humans. The information was not impressive. Humans came from a small planet called Earth. They had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Their bodies were soft, with no natural armor or weapons. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear very well. They needed to sleep for a third of every day. They lived for less than 100 years on average. By every measure that mattered, humans should have been a minor species. They should have stayed on their home planet and let the greater races handle the dangers of the galaxy. Yet somehow, they had spread to hundreds of worlds. Somehow, they had built a military that other species had learned to respect. Corveth did not understand it. He hoped this mission would provide answers. The human base on Kara 7 was not what he expected. Thelian military bases were quiet and orderly. Every soldier knew their place and their duty. They moved with purpose and spoke only when necessary. The human base was chaos. Soldiers stood in groups, talking loudly and laughing. Some of them were playing games with small objects they threw at targets. Others were eating food that filled the air with strange smells. Music played from somewhere, a rhythmic sound that several humans were moving their bodies to. Corveth stood at the entrance and stared. How could these creatures call themselves soldiers? "You must be the observer." He turned to see a human walking toward him. The human was shorter than Corveth by nearly half a meter. His skin was a warm brown color, and his black hair was cut very short. He had a smile on his face that showed his small, flat teeth. "I am Captain Park Jinho," the human said. "Welcome to the 47th Infantry. We call ourselves the Iron Wolves." Corveth looked at the chaos behind the captain. "I see." Jinho laughed. It was a strange sound, full of air and noise. "I know what you are thinking. These do not look like warriors. But trust me, friend, when the fighting starts, there are no soldiers I would rather have beside me." A female human appeared next to Jinho. She was smaller than him, with long black hair tied behind her head. Her face was serious, and she studied Corveth with sharp eyes. "This is Sergeant Lee Yuna," Jinho said. "She is my second in command. Whatever you need, she can help you." "I need nothing," Corveth said. "I am here only to observe." Yuna and Jinho exchanged a look that Corveth could not read. Human faces were so strange. They moved in ways that seemed to carry meaning, but he did not know how to interpret them. "Well," Jinho said, "you can observe from the command tent. We have a place set up for you there. The Vex swarm has been moving closer every day. We expect them to attack within the week." Corveth followed them through the base. Everywhere he looked, he saw more evidence of human disorder. Soldiers sat on the ground playing card games. Others were drawing pictures or writing in small books. One group was gathered around a device that projected moving images while they made loud sounds of excitement. "Do your soldiers not prepare for battle?" Corveth asked. Yuna glanced back at him. "They are preparing. In their own way. This does not look like preparation." Jinho stopped walking. He turned to face Corveth, and for a moment, his smile faded. Corveth saw something in his eyes, something old and tired. "Let me tell you something about humans," Jinho said. "We know we are going to die. We know it from the moment we are old enough to understand what death means. Every human you see here knows that the next battle might be their last." He gestured at the soldiers around them. "So, they play games. They laugh. They enjoy each moment they have. Because when the swarm comes, they will put down their cards and pick up their weapons. They will fight with everything they have, and some of them will not come back." Corveth did not know what to say. On Thelia, death in battle was an honor. Soldiers did not mourn it. They did not fear it. It was simply part of service. But these humans seemed to feel something different. They seemed to hold on to life with a desperate grip, even as they walked toward danger. "I do not understand," Corveth admitted. Yuna looked at him with those sharp eyes. "You will." That night, Corveth lay in the sleeping area they had given him and listened to the sounds of the base. He could hear humans talking and laughing. He could hear their music and their games. He could hear the life they were living before the battle came. He thought about Admiral Voss and the look in his eyes. The Admiral had seen something in human soldiers, something that had changed him, something that had made him send Corveth on this mission. What had Voss witnessed? Corveth closed his 4 eyes and tried to sleep. But his mind kept returning to Captain Jinho's words. Humans knew they were going to die. They knew it, and they fought anyway. He did not understand. Not yet. But he was beginning to think that understanding might change him too. 3 days passed on the human base, and Corveth learned many things about humans. Most of them confused him. He learned that humans needed to eat 3 times every day. They gathered in a large building they called the mess hall, and they shared food together. They talked while they ate. They told stories and made jokes. Sometimes they argued about things that seemed unimportant, like which food tasted better or which team would win some game back on Earth. He learned that humans formed bonds with each other very quickly. Soldiers who had only known each other for a few months acted like family. They called each other brother and sister. They protected each other. They teased each other in ways that would be insults on Thelia but seemed to mean affection here. He learned that humans were obsessed with small comforts. They complained about the temperature. They complained about the beds. They complained about the food, even as they ate it. Yet when Corveth suggested they focus on more important things, they laughed and said complaining was how humans coped with stress. None of this made sense to him. On the 4th day, Corveth was sitting in the command tent when Sergeant Yuna found him. She had a cup of dark liquid in her hand, and she offered another cup to him. "Coffee," she said. "Humans drink it to stay awake." Corveth took the cup but did not drink. His species could not process human food safely. "Thank you." Yuna sat down across from him. For a long moment, she just looked at him with those sharp eyes. Then she spoke. "You think we are fools." It was not a question. Corveth considered lying but decided against it. "I think you are strange. You know a battle is coming. You know many of you will die. Yet you act as if everything is normal." Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Let me tell you about human history. For most of our existence, we fought each other. Wars, battles, conflicts that lasted for centuries. We have been killing each other since before we could write." She took a drink from her cup. "We learned something from all that death. We learned that fear does not help you fight. Anger does not help you fight. The only thing that helps is connection. Love. The knowledge that the person next to you will die for you, and you will die for them." Corveth thought about this. On Thelia, soldiers were loyal to the Empire. They fought for honor and duty. Personal connections were discouraged because they could affect judgment. Your military allows such bonds? Our military depends on them. Yuna said. A human will fight harder for their family than for any flag or ideal. So we make our units into families. Before Korveth could respond, an alarm began to sound. It was loud and harsh, and it made the humans move with sudden speed. Yuna was on her feet instantly, her cup forgotten on the ground. They are here, she said. The swarm. Korveth followed her out of the tent. What he saw would stay with him for the rest of his long life. The base had transformed. The laughing, joking soldiers were gone. In their place stood warriors. They moved with purpose and precision. Weapons appeared in hands. Armor was fastened with quick, practiced movements. The chaos of before had become a machine of war. Captain Jinho stood at the center of it all. His voice carried across the base, giving orders that his soldiers followed without hesitation. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something Korveth had never seen before. Iron wolves, Jinho shouted. Today we hunt. The soldiers answered with a sound that made Korveth step backward. It was not a word. It was a roar. Deep and primal. It came from their chests, from some place that held anger and love, and the will to destroy anything that threatened their pack. Korveth had studied many warrior species. He had seen the cold efficiency of machine armies. He had witnessed the mindless hunger of the swarm. He had analyzed the calculated strikes of master tacticians. He had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just ready to fight, they were ready to die, and somehow, that made them more dangerous, not less. Yuna appeared beside him. She had a weapon in her hands and armor on her body. Her face was still and hard, like stone. Stay in the command tent, she said. You will be safe there. Just watch. That is what you came to do. She turned to leave, but Korveth found himself asking a question. Are you afraid? Yuna looked back at him. And then she smiled. A real smile this time. Yes. I am terrified. But fear is just another feeling. I can fight through feelings. Then she was gone. Running to join her unit, Korveth made his way to the command tent. From there, he could see the battlefield through the screens that showed what the cameras captured. He could hear the radio communications between the human soldiers. He could watch everything without being in danger. The Vex swarm came like a wave of darkness. There were thousands of them, creatures of chitin and claw, driven by hunger and the commands of their hive mind. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They had eaten worlds. The humans numbered only 300. Korveth expected to watch a slaughter. He expected to see the humans overwhelmed in minutes. He expected to write a report about how their foolish confidence had led to their deaths. He was wrong. The first line of humans opened fire. The sound was deafening, even through the speakers in the command tent. The swarm creatures fell by the dozens. But more kept coming. They climbed over the bodies of their dead and kept advancing. The humans did not retreat. They did not panic. They held their ground and kept shooting. Korveth watched Captain Jinho on one of the screens. The captain was at the front of his soldiers, firing his weapon with steady hands. When a swarm creature got close, he drew a blade and cut it down. When another lunged for one of his soldiers, he threw himself in its path and took the blow instead. He should have fallen. The creature's claws tore through his armor and into his flesh. Blood, red and wet, poured from the wound. Any Thelian would have collapsed from such an injury. Jinho kept fighting. He killed the creature that had wounded him. Then he killed the next one, and the next. His face was twisted with pain, but his hands never stopped moving. His voice never stopped calling out orders. "Hold the line," he shouted. "They do not get past us. Not one." Korveth stared at the screen. His 4 eyes were wide, and his hands were shaking. This was not supposed to be possible. Humans were weak. Humans were fragile. Humans should have been easy prey for the swarm, but they were not prey. They were predators. And now Korveth understood why Admiral Voss had looked at him with those knowing eyes. Now he understood why the Thelian Empire needed to understand humans. They were not studying a minor species. They were studying something ancient and terrible. Something that had evolved through millions of years of killing. Something that had turned weakness into strength and fear into fury. Corveth watched the humans fight, and for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The battle had been going for 2 hours, and Corveth could not look away from the screens. The humans should have broken by now. Any other species would have retreated or surrendered. The swarm outnumbered them 10 to 1. The creatures kept coming in endless waves, and for every 100 that fell, 200 more appeared from the darkness. But the humans did not break. They did not retreat. They stood their ground and killed everything that came at them. Corveth watched Sergeant Yuna on one of the screens. She had positioned herself on a raised platform, with a long weapon that fired heavy projectiles. Each shot punched through multiple swarm creatures, leaving holes in their bodies that spilled dark fluid onto the ground. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. She moved the weapon with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Left side. Sector 7, she called into her radio. We have a breach forming. I need support. A group of soldiers moved to fill the gap. They worked together like parts of a single machine, each one covering the others. When one ran out of ammunition, another stepped forward to keep firing while the first one reloaded. When one was wounded, others pulled them back to safety while still fighting. Corveth had studied military tactics from 100 different species. He had never seen coordination like this. It was not the programmed efficiency of machines. It was something alive, something that adapted and changed with every moment of the battle. Captain Jinho was still on the front line. His wound had been wrapped with a quick bandage, but blood was still seeping through the white material. He should have been in the medical tent. He should have been letting others lead. Instead, he was everywhere at once. He shouted encouragement to tired soldiers. He helped carry wounded to safety. He threw himself at any creature that threatened to break through the line. "Taeho!" Jinho shouted into his radio. "I need you at the east wall!" "They are bringing up bigger ones." Corveth shifted his attention to another screen and saw the soldier called Taeho. He was young, perhaps only 20 human years. His face was round and his eyes were bright, even in the middle of the battle. He carried a weapon that was almost as big as he was, and he ran toward the east wall without hesitation. The bigger swarm creatures were terrible to see. They stood twice the height of a human, with armor plates covering their bodies and claws that could cut through metal. Normal weapons barely scratched them. Taeho dropped to one knee and aimed his heavy weapon. The blast that came from it lit up the night and struck the first of the big creatures in the chest. The impact threw the creature backward, and it did not get up. "One down," Taeho shouted. "Who wants to count?" Other soldiers laughed through the radio. They were laughing during a battle. Corveth did not understand how that was possible. Taeho fired again and again. Each shot took down another of the big creatures. The humans around him fought with new energy, inspired by his success. Then something changed. The swarm stopped advancing. The creatures pulled back, forming a circle around the human base. They stood still. Thousands of them, watching with their many eyes. "What are they doing?" one of the soldiers asked through the radio. Jinho's voice came back, tense and alert. "They are waiting for something. Everyone, reload and take positions. This is not over." Corveth leaned closer to his screens. He had studied the swarm. He knew their tactics. They did not stop unless they had a reason. The ground began to shake. At first, it was just a slight vibration. Then it grew stronger. Equipment fell from shelves. Soldiers struggled to keep their balance. The cameras shook, making the images blur and jump. Something was coming from below. The earth at the center of the swarm forces split open. From the darkness beneath emerged a creature that made Corveth's 4 hearts stop. It was a queen. Swarm queens were rare. They were the intelligence behind the mindless soldiers. They directed the battles and made the strategies. And they were nearly impossible to kill. This queen was massive. Her body stretched for 50 meters, covered in plates of armor that no weapon could pierce. Her head held a dozen eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. Her mouth opened to reveal rows of teeth that could bite through starship hulls. "Stars save us," Yuna whispered through the radio. Jinho's voice came back, and it was still calm, still steady. Iron Wolves, listen to me. We knew this could happen. We have a plan. Everyone knows their job. We do this together, or we do not do it at all. The human soldiers did not run. They did not freeze in terror. They moved into new positions, following orders that had been planned for this moment. Corveth watched and realized that the humans had known. They had known a queen might come. They had prepared for this. They had chosen to stay and fight anyway. Why? He found himself saying out loud. Why would you stay for this? No one heard him. No one answered. But as he watched the screens, he began to understand. The colony behind them held 20,000 civilians, families, children, old people who could not fight. If the humans retreated, those people would die. The swarm would eat them alive. So the humans did not retreat. Teho and his heavy weapon moved to face the queen. Other soldiers with similar weapons joined him. They formed a line and aimed at the massive creature. On my mark, Jinho said. Hit her eyes. It is the only weak point. The queen began to move forward. The ground shook with each step. Her smaller soldiers followed her, ready to swarm over the humans the moment the shooting started. Mark. The heavy weapons fired as one. The blast streaked across the battlefield and struck the queen's face. Several of her eyes burst in explosions of fluid. She screamed, a sound that hurt Corveth's ears even through the speakers. But she did not fall. She did not stop. Instead, she moved faster, her claws reaching for the humans who had hurt her. Again, Jinho shouted. Keep firing. The soldiers fired again. More eyes burst. The queen stumbled but kept coming. Her smaller soldiers rushed forward with her. A wave of death approaching the human lines. Corveth found himself standing. His hands were pressed against the screen as if he could reach through and help somehow. But he could not. He could only watch. The humans kept fighting. They kept shooting. They kept dying. And they did not stop. Corveth had seen many battles in his career. He had watched species fight and die. He had written reports about tactics and casualties and strategic outcomes. He had never felt like this. He had never cared about the outcome. He had never wanted so desperately for one side to win. The queen was getting closer. The human lines were bending under the pressure. Soldiers were falling, pulled down by swarm creatures and torn apart. But still they fought. Still they held. And Corveth watched, his 4 eyes unable to look away, his heart's beating with a rhythm that matched the humans' desperate battle. The queen was 30 meters from the human lines when everything went wrong. A wave of swarm creatures broke through the defenses on the north side. The soldiers there fell back, trying to hold them, but there were too many. The creatures poured through the gap like water through a broken wall. North side is collapsing, someone shouted through the radio. Corveth looked at the screen showing that section. He saw soldiers fighting hand to hand with the creatures. He saw bodies falling. He saw the line breaking apart. And then he saw the creatures heading toward the command tent. Toward him. For a moment, Corveth froze. He was not a soldier. He had no weapons. He had no training for close combat. He was just an observer. And observers were not supposed to die. The door of the command tent tore open. 3 swarm creatures pushed through, their claws reaching for him. Their eyes were empty of anything except hunger. Corveth stumbled backward. His foot caught on a cable, and he fell. The creatures came closer. He could smell them now, a rotting scent that filled his nose and made him want to vomit. This was how he would die. On a distant planet. Killed by mindless beasts. All because he had been sent to watch humans fight. Then Teho appeared. The young soldier came through the torn door like a storm. His heavy weapon was gone. Lost somewhere in the battle. Instead, he held a blade in each hand. His face was covered in blood, some of it his own and some of it not. He moved faster than Corveth thought humans could move. The first creature died before it knew he was there. The second managed to turn before Teho's blade took its head. The third tried to run, but Teho was faster. In 5 seconds, all 3 creatures were dead. Teho stood over them, breathing hard. Then he turned to look at Corveth with those bright young eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Corveth shook his head. He could not find words. Tejo smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "Good. Stay behind me. I will get you somewhere safe." They left the command tent together. Outside, the battle was worse than Corveth had imagined. The screens had not shown how loud it was, how chaotic. Soldiers fought in every direction. Creatures fell, and more took their place. The queen was still advancing, crushing everything in her path. Tejo led Corveth through the chaos. He killed any creature that came close. He seemed to know exactly where to go, exactly how to move. Despite everything, Corveth felt almost safe with this young human protecting him. They were halfway to a bunker when Tejo stopped. The queen had changed direction. She was no longer heading for the main defense line. She was heading for the bunker where the wounded soldiers were being treated, the bunker where the medical staff were working to save lives. "No," Tejo whispered. Corveth saw the look on his face. It was not fear. It was something worse. It was the look of someone who saw what needed to be done and knew what it would cost. "Tejo," Corveth said. "What are you doing?" Tejo did not answer. He pushed Corveth toward a group of soldiers. "Take him to safety. Keep him alive. He needs to see everything." Then he turned and ran toward the queen. "Stop," Corveth shouted. "What are you doing? You cannot fight that thing alone." But Tejo was already gone, sprinting across the battlefield with his two blades in his hands. He was running towards certain death, and he was smiling. Corveth watched as Tejo reached the queen's legs. The creature was so large that she did not notice him at first. He climbed her like she was a mountain, driving his blades into her flesh to create handholds. Other soldiers saw what he was doing. They began to fire at the queen's face again, drawing her attention away from the tiny human climbing her body. Tejo reached the queen's back. There, beneath the armor plates, was a gap. A weakness. Corveth remembered from his studies that swarm queens had a secondary brain there, one that controlled their healing abilities. Tejo did not hesitate. He drove both blades into the gap and pushed with all his strength. The queen screamed. Her whole body shook. She reached back with her claws, trying to grab the thing that was hurting her. Her claws caught Tejo's body and threw him off her back like he was nothing. He hit the ground hard. Corveth could see even from this distance that he was not moving. But the queen was hurt. She was stumbling. Her movements were becoming slow and clumsy. The wound Tejo had given her was spreading, stopping her body from healing itself. The soldiers saw their chance. They poured fire into her weakened form. Rockets and heavy weapons struck her from all sides. She fell to her knees, then onto her side. Her eyes went dark one by one. The queen was dead. Without their queen, the remaining swarm creatures lost their coordination. They became confused, attacking randomly or simply standing still. The humans cut them down with cold efficiency. The battle was over. Corveth found himself walking toward where Tejo had fallen. Soldiers were already gathered there. Captain Jinho was kneeling beside the young man's body, his bloody hands pressing against wounds that would not stop bleeding. "Stay with me, Tejo," Jinho was saying. "You did it. You killed her. Just stay with me." Tejo's eyes were open, but they were losing their brightness. His breath came in short, wet gasps. His body was broken in ways that no medic could fix, but he was smiling. "Did we win?" he asked. Jinho nodded. Tears were running down his face, mixing with the blood and dirt. "We won, because of you. You saved everyone." Tejo's smile grew wider. His eyes moved to the soldiers gathered around him. His family. "Tell my mother I was brave," he said. Then the brightness left his eyes, and he was gone. Jinho let out a sound that Corveth had never heard before. It was grief and rage and love all mixed together. It was the sound of a heart breaking. The other soldiers made similar sounds. Some of them cried. Some of them simply stood with their heads bowed. Then Jinho stood up. He wiped his face with his arm. When he looked at his soldiers, his eyes were different. They were cold and hard, and filled with something that made Corveth step backward. "There are still creatures alive out there," Jinho said. His voice was flat, empty of everything except purpose. "We finish this. For Teho. For everyone we lost." The soldiers nodded. They picked up their weapons. They went back to work, and Corveth understood something that he would never forget. Humans did not fight despite knowing they would die. They did not fight because they were too foolish to be afraid. They fought because they loved. They fought because losing the people they cared about was worse than losing their own lives. That love made them unstoppable. That love made them terrifying. The sun rose over Kara 7, and the battlefield was finally silent. Corveth stood at the edge of the base and looked at what remained. Bodies of swarm creatures covered the ground in every direction. Their dark blood had soaked into the earth, turning it black. The air smelled of smoke and death and something else. Victory. The humans had won. 300 soldiers against thousands of swarm creatures and a queen. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. 87 humans had died in the battle. Another 112 were wounded. Some would never fight again. Some would carry scars for the rest of their short lives. Corveth watched as the survivors gathered their dead. They moved with gentle hands, treating each body with care and respect. They spoke names out loud as they worked, remembering who each person had been. Private Cho Minji. She loved music and bad jokes. Corporal Ha Dongwu. He could cook better than any chef on earth. Lieutenant Nam Sujin. She was going to get married next month. Each name was followed by a moment of silence. Then, the soldiers would move to the next body and speak again. It took hours to collect everyone. Corveth found himself memorizing the names. He did not know why. He had never bothered to learn the names of the dead before. They were just numbers in his reports. Casualties. Statistics. But these were not statistics. These were people who had laughed and loved and fought for something greater than themselves. They deserved to be remembered. Captain Jinho found Corveth as the last body was being carried away. The captain looked different in the morning light. Older. More tired. The wound on his side had been properly treated, but he moved like every step caused pain. "You survived," Jinho said. "Teho made sure of that." Corveth nodded. "I owe him my life." "Then make sure his death meant something," Jinho said. "Write your report. Tell your empire what you saw here. Tell them what humans can do." He walked away before Corveth could respond. The transport ship arrived 3 days later. By then, the base had been cleaned, and the dead had been buried in a field overlooking the colony. Each grave had a small marker with a name and a message. Some of the messages were in Korean. Some were in English. All of them were about love. Sergeant Yuna came to say goodbye to Corveth before he left. She looked tired, but her eyes were still sharp, still watchful. "What will you write in your report?" she asked. Corveth had thought about this question for 3 days. He had considered every word, every phrase. He had tried to find a way to explain what he had witnessed. "I will write the truth," he said. "I will tell them that humans are not what we thought. I will tell them that humans are something new. Something the galaxy has never seen before." Yuna smiled. "And what is that?" Corveth looked at the graves in the distance. He thought about Teho climbing the queen with nothing but 2 blades and courage. He thought about Jinho leading his soldiers with a wound that should have killed him. He thought about all the humans who had died so that others could live. "Humans are love made into weapons," he said. "You turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. You care so much about each other that you become willing to do anything. To sacrifice anything. To become anything." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "That is why we are dangerous," she said. "Not because we are strong. Not because we are smart. But because we have something worth dying for. And as long as we have that, nothing in the galaxy can stop us." She held out her hand. Corveth had learned that this was a human gesture of respect. He took her hand and felt her grip, firm and warm and alive. "Goodbye, observer," Yuna said. I hope we never meet on opposite sides of a battlefield. So do I, Corveth said. And he meant it. The journey back to Thelia took 4 days. Corveth spent most of that time writing his report. He rewrote it 7 times before he was satisfied. Every word had to be perfect. Every detail had to be clear. Admiral Voss was waiting for him when he arrived at command. The old warrior looked at Corveth with knowing eyes. You have seen them, Voss said. It was not a question. Corveth nodded. I have seen them. And? Corveth handed over his report. It was short, only 3 pages, but every word carried weight. Voss read it in silence. When he finished, he looked up at Corveth with an expression that might have been fear. You believe this? I know it, Corveth said. Admiral, we have made a terrible mistake. We have treated humans as a minor species. We have ignored them, dismissed them. But they are not minor. They are perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Voss set down the report. Because of their love. Because of what their love makes them capable of. Admiral, I watched a young man climb a swarm queen and kill her with 2 blades. I watched wounded soldiers fight through pain that would have killed any Thelian. I watched 300 humans defeat an army that should have destroyed them. Corveth leaned forward. They do not fight like we do. They do not calculate odds or measure risks. They fight for the person standing next to them. They fight for their families, and that makes them unstoppable. Voss was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What do you recommend? Corveth had thought about this too. We must never become enemies of humanity. If we fight them, they will not stop until one side is destroyed. Their love will drive them to victory or death, and they will accept either one before surrender. He paused. But if we become their friends, if we earn their love instead of their hatred, then we will have the most powerful allies in the galaxy. Voss nodded slowly. I will take this to the Council. Your report will change our entire strategy regarding humans. Corveth bowed and turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. Admiral, there is one more thing. Yes, I cannot forget what I saw. I close my eyes and I see Private Tejo smiling as he ran toward the Queen. I see Captain Jinho crying over his dead soldier. I see all of them, fighting and dying and never giving up. Corveth's voice broke slightly. I was ordered to watch humans in battle. Now I rue ever witnessing it. Not because it was terrible, but because it was beautiful, and I will never be able to look at the galaxy the same way again. Voss looked at him with understanding. That is what happened to me too. Welcome to the knowledge, analyst. It is a heavy burden to carry. Corveth left the office and walked to the window. Outside, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere out there, humans were living and loving and preparing to fight for each other. He thought about Tejo's last words. Tell my mother I was brave. Corveth had never met Tejo's mother. He never would. But somewhere on Earth, a woman would receive a message about her son's death. She would cry and grieve and carry that loss forever. And she would be proud, because her son had been brave, because he had died protecting the people he loved. That was humanity. That was their gift and their curse. They loved so deeply that they would burn the galaxy to protect that love. Corveth understood now. He understood why Admiral Voss had sent him to that planet. He understood why the Thelian Empire needed to know about humans. Because in a galaxy full of cold calculations and survival instincts, humans were something different. They were fire and fury, and devotion wrapped in fragile flesh. They were the most dangerous creatures Corveth had ever studied, and he would never, ever forget them.